All right, let me break it down for you. It was a regular Wednesday afternoon, nothing fancy. You know, the kind of day when you're just out running errands, minding your own damn business, and life decides to hit you with a plot twist. That's where I was, standing outside the local grocery store in Huntsville, Alabama, clutching a bag of overpriced organic kale for my elderly neighbor, Miss Gladys, who swore by clean eating. I didn't even want to be there, but hey, when a sweet old lady asks you for help, you do it. Now, my car was parked right outside the store entrance. Technically, yeah, it was a no parking zone, but come on, 2 minutes to grab kale and get out? Not exactly the crime of the century. Anyway, I'm walking back to my car, and that's when he shows up. Officer Thomas Griffin. This guy strutted into the lot like he was auditioning for a bad cop show. Mid-30s, buzz cut, mirrored sunglasses. You know the type. The "I'm the law, and you're not gonna forget it" kind of guy. As soon as our eyes met, I felt it. You know that gut feeling like when you realize your day's about to go south faster than a snowball in July? Yeah, that. "Hey, you can't park there," he barks, his voice already dripping with attitude. I hold up the bag of kale, just grabbing groceries for my neighbor. "I'll be gone in a sec." But apparently that wasn't good enough. Griffin's chest puffed out like a rooster ready to fight. Rules are rules. You think they don't apply to you? Now, let me tell you something about me. I'm a patient guy. Years in the service taught me how to keep my cool even when someone's poking the bear. So I smiled and said, "I hear you, officer. I'm just leaving." But no, that wasn't enough for him. Griffin wasn't here to enforce parking regulations. He was here for a show. "Step away from the vehicle," he snaps, his hand hovering near his belt. For a second, I thought he was going for his gun. Turns out it was worse. Handcuffs. "Dude, are you serious right now?" I say, half laughing because honestly, this was ridiculous. It's a no parking zone, not a felony. Griffin didn't laugh. Instead, he yanked my arm like I was some kind of threat to public safety. And before I knew it, my face was pressed against the hood of my car and my hands were in cuffs. The kale sprawled on the ground like a bad metaphor for my dignity. A small crowd started gathering. People were whispering, recording on their phones. One woman gasped, "Is he resisting?" Like, seriously, lady? I was standing still like a mannequin in a department store window. "Officer," I say, keeping my tone calm, "this is unnecessary. I'll move the car, no problem." But Griffin wasn't hearing it. "You're resisting arrest." I turned my head as much as I could and gave him a look. "What the hell am I being arrested for? Parking badly? Buying kale? Enlighten me." That was when he leaned in close and said, loud enough for the onlookers to hear, "Assaulting an officer." And let me tell you, if my jaw wasn't already pinned to the hood of my car, it would have dropped. Assault? Dude must have hit his head on his cop car this morning because I hadn't laid a finger on him. Now here's where the real kicker comes in. As he's hauling me to his patrol car, he notices something, a small pin on my jacket. It's an old military service pin. Nothing flashy, just a subtle nod to the years I spent serving my country. Griffin squints at it like it's some kind of alien artifact, but he doesn't say a word. Instead, he slams the car door shut and we're off to the station. Internal monologue time. Sitting in the back of that car, my mind's racing. Not because I'm scared. I've faced worse situations in life than some dude with a badge and an ego. But there's something about being treated like a criminal for doing absolutely nothing wrong that stings in a way you can't shake off. It's not about me being arrested. It's about what this whole damn thing represents. In that moment, I wasn't just Michael James, the guy who helped Miss Gladys with her groceries. I was every black man who's ever been thrown into the system just because someone felt like flexing their authority. And you know what? I decided right then and there that Griffin was about to regret this whole charade. But first, I had to get through the booking process without losing my cool. That's where I'll leave you for now. Because trust me, what happened next? You're not ready for it. All right. So let me paint you a picture. It's been a week since the whole parking lot fiasco. And honestly, I was trying to put the whole mess behind me. I figured Officer Ego Trip, aka Thomas Griffin, had his little power play and moved on. But nope, this guy wasn't done yet. I'm sitting at home enjoying a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, because life doesn't give me enough sweetness anyway, when there's a loud knock on my door. And by loud, I mean the kind that says, "Open up or I'm breaking this down." I open the door and guess who's standing there? A guy in a cheap suit holding a stack of papers. "Michael James?" he asks, like he doesn't already know. "Yeah, what's up?" I say, taking a sip of my coffee. He shoves the papers at me. "You've been served." And just like that, my day's ruined. Turns out Griffin, the guy who dragged me to the station over a parking ticket, is now suing me. For what, you ask? Oh, just assault and emotional distress. Yeah, you heard that right. Assault. Because apparently standing still and getting cuffed was too aggressive for him. Now, I'm not the type to yell at strangers, but this was a moment. "You've got to be kidding me," I mutter, flipping through the papers. The suit was a goldmine of nonsense, claiming I lunged at Griffin and posed a serious threat to his safety. Dude must have been writing this while watching an action movie because none of it made sense. Here's the kicker. This lawsuit wasn't just a petty move. No, Griffin was playing the long game. By making this public, he painted himself as some kind of hero who stood up to a violent threat. The local news stations ate it up like Thanksgiving dinner. Suddenly he's on TV giving interviews about how dangerous his job is and how he won't back down. It was so over the top I half expected him to start selling t-shirts with his face on them. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here like, is this real life? The nerve of this guy, dragging my name through the mud just to boost his own career. But here's the thing about me. I don't lose my cool easily. Years of service taught me patience. So instead of blowing up, I called my lawyer, a no-nonsense guy named Davis who's been handling cases like this since before I was born. Davis takes one look at the lawsuit and laughs. "This is garbage," he says, tossing the papers onto his desk. "But garbage can still stink up your life if you let it. We need to fight this head on." Over the next few days, things started heating up. Griffin was milking his 15 minutes of fame for all they were worth, while my lawyer and I were busy gathering evidence. We got security footage from the parking lot, statements from witnesses, and even Miss Gladys, who was ready to testify that I was too busy buying kale to lunge at anyone. But the best part? Griffin didn't know who he was messing with. He thought I was just some random guy he could push around, but he had no idea. And I wasn't about to spoil the surprise. The court date was set, and the whole town was buzzing about it. Griffin's ego was bigger than ever, and he was already acting like he'd won. But let me tell you something. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. I just had to wait for the right moment to pull the rug out from under him. The day of the trial felt like a bad episode of a daytime soap. The courthouse was packed. Journalists, locals, even some guy selling hot dogs outside. Everyone wanted to see the hero cop take down the so-called violent suspect. It was a damn circus. And guess who was the main attraction? Yours truly. I walked into the courtroom wearing my best suit. Nothing flashy, but clean and sharp. Griffin, on the other hand, was all swagger. He sat there with his lawyer, smirking like he'd already won. The guy was practically glowing under the spotlight. You'd think he'd just solve world hunger instead of trying to ruin my life. The proceedings started, and Griffin's lawyer wasted no time painting me as a monster. According to him, I was some kind of unhinged lunatic who lunged at a brave officer doing his job. The words were so dramatic I half expected a violinist to pop out of the jury box. Meanwhile, Griffin sat there nodding along like he deserved a medal for arresting a guy buying kale. Then came my turn. My lawyer, Davis, was smooth as silk. He started by laying out the facts. No criminal record, veteran, upstanding member of the community. You know, all the stuff that screams not a threat. Then he pulled out the big guns. The security footage. The courtroom went silent as the video played. There I was, calmly walking to my car, holding the damn bag of kale. No lunging, no threats, just me trying to explain myself while Griffin grabbed me like I was robbing a bank. The look on Griffin's face when that video played? Priceless. He squirmed in his seat, trying to look anywhere but at the screen. "Your Honor," Davis said, pointing to the footage, "does this look like assault to you? Because to me, it looks like my client was the victim of unnecessary force." Boom, mic drop. But the real twist came when I stood up to testify. Davis asked me to state my name and occupation. I cleared my throat and said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "My name is Michael James. I'm a retired U.S. Army general." You could have heard a pin drop. The jury's jaws hit the floor. And Griffin? The guy looked like he'd just seen a ghost. His lawyer tried to object, but it was too late. Davis had already handed over my military records to the court, proving every word. "General James has served this country for 25 years, Davis continued. He's led troops, defended freedoms, and put his life on the line countless times. And yet Officer Griffin wants you to believe this man is a threat?" The courtroom exploded in whispers. Griffin's smirk was long gone, replaced by a shade of pale I didn't know was possible. As I stepped down from the stand, I caught Griffin's eye. He couldn't look at me. For the first time since this mess started, he realized he'd picked the wrong guy to mess with. But trust me, the best part was still to come. All right, here's where things got real. Griffin was sweating bullets and the courtroom was buzzing like a beehive. The jury? They were done with his nonsense the second they saw the footage and heard my background, but Griffin's lawyer wasn't ready to give up. He stood up, trying one last Hail Mary. "Your Honor." Officer Griffin acted in good faith, believing he was under threat. This isn't about General James's military service. It's about maintaining public safety. Oh, come on. Even the judge looked like she wanted to roll her eyes. But before she could respond, my lawyer, Davis jumped in. "With all due respect, safety isn't achieved by abusing power," Davis said, cool as a cucumber. "This isn't a case of an officer doing his duty. It's a case of an officer inflating his ego at someone else's expense. And my client, he deserves better." Boom. Courtroom checkmate. Then came Griffin's turn to testify. And let me tell you, the guy was unraveling like a cheap sweater. He stammered through his story, tripping over his own lies. Every time Davis asked a question, Griffin tried to dodge it like a bad game of dodgeball, but Davis wasn't letting him off easy. "So," Davis said, leaning in, "you're telling this court you felt threatened by a man holding a bag of kale? Fascinating. Tell me, Officer Griffin, were the leafy greens particularly aggressive that day?" The jury burst out laughing. Even the judge had to cover her mouth to hide a smile. Griffin, he looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. The final blow came during closing arguments. Davis didn't hold back. This case isn't just about Michael James. It's about accountability. It's about ensuring that those in power don't abuse it. Officer Griffin chose to fabricate a story instead of admitting he was wrong. But the evidence doesn't lie, and neither does General James's character. Griffin's lawyer tried to spin some last-minute nonsense, but it was over. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before coming back with their verdict. Not guilty. And just like that, Griffin's little house of cards came crashing down. The department launched an internal investigation, and a word on the street was that Griffin was suspended pending further review. Meanwhile, I walked out of that courtroom with my head high and my record spotless. As I stepped outside, reporters swarmed me, shouting questions. I held up my hand and said, "I have nothing to add." The truth spoke for itself, and that was it. No gloating, no victory lap. Just the satisfaction of knowing justice was served. But if you ask me, the best part? Watching Griffin squirm as the reality sank in, he'd messed with the wrong guy.